Let me start with something that surprised even me. As a brain doctor, I never expected to say this about a fruit that most people think is harmless, even healthy. But when you look at what it does inside the body, especially at night, the picture changes fast. And once you understand the mechanism, you'll see why this matters for stroke risk more than people realize. Most people think stroke happens suddenly and randomly, but strokes usually build quietly. They're the end result of inflammation, thick blood, damaged blood vessels, and unstable blood sugar. What shocked me is how one very common fruit can push several of these risk factors at the same time, especially if you eat it in the evening. I'm talking about fruit that's extremely high in fructose. Fructose is not handled like other sugars. It doesn't go to your muscles or brain first. It goes straight to the liver. When the liver gets hit with a large dose of fructose, especially without fiber or protein to slow it down, it converts a significant portion into fat. That fat doesn't just sit there. It increases fatty liver, raises triglycerides, and thickens the blood. Thicker blood means slower blood flow. Slower blood flow increases the chance of clot formation, and clots are one of the main causes of stroke. Now here's where the timing becomes critical. When you eat high fructose fruit at night, your body is supposed to be repairing, not processing sugar. Insulin sensitivity drops in the evening. That means your blood sugar stays higher for longer. High blood sugar damages the lining of your blood vessels, including the tiny vessels in the brain. Over time, those vessels become stiff, fragile, and inflamed. But there's another layer most people miss. Fructose pulls water into the digestive system and increases uric acid. Elevated uric acid reduces nitric oxide, which your blood vessels need to relax. When blood vessels can't relax, blood pressure goes up. Nighttime blood pressure spikes are strongly linked to stroke risk, especially in the early morning hours. This is why many strokes happen shortly after waking. Now let me be very clear. I'm not saying fruit is poison. I'm saying the type, the amount, and the timing matter more than people think. The biggest problem fruits in this category are the ones that are very sweet and easy to overeat. Fruit juice is one of the worst offenders because the fiber is gone. Dried fruit is another major issue because the sugar is concentrated, and people eat far more than they realize. One small handful can deliver a massive fructose load to the liver in minutes. Your brain depends on steady blood flow. It does not like sugar spikes, thick blood, or inflamed arteries. Every time blood sugar surges, the brain feels it. Over time, these repeated surges damage the blood-brain barrier, making the brain more vulnerable to clots and bleeding. Here's something else that shocked me. High fructose intake reduces magnesium levels. Magnesium helps prevent blood vessel spasms and clot formation. Low magnesium is strongly associated with stroke risk. So you're not just raising sugar and fat in the blood, you're also depleting one of the key minerals that protects the brain. And if someone already has insulin resistance, high blood pressure, or even mild fatty liver, the effect is amplified. What looks like a healthy snack becomes a metabolic stressor. This doesn't happen overnight in one day, but the damage accumulates quietly. And the night you eat a large amount, your blood becomes thicker, your pressure rises, and your vessels become less flexible while you sleep. That's the danger most people never consider. So what should you do? First, respect timing. If you eat fruit earlier in the day is far safer than late at night. Second, choose fruits that come with fiber and lower sugar impact. Berries are a very different story compared to very sweet fruits or dried versions. Third, never drink fruit as juice. If brain health matters to you, you remove the very thing that protects you. And finally, balance matters. Pair fruit with protein or healthy fat so sugar enters the bloodstream slowly instead of all at once. Your brain is incredibly sensitive. It rewards stability and punishes spikes. When you understand that, you start making choices that protect you long before a stroke ever has a chance to develop. If this changed the way you look at fruit and brain health, make sure you take this information seriously. Small daily habits shape your brain's future more than most people realize. When we talk about stroke risk, most people immediately think about blood pressure, cholesterol, or genetics. Very few people think about what's happening in the liver late at night after a sweet fruit snack. But this is exactly where Keynote 1 becomes so important. And honestly, this is the part that shocked me the most when I started digging into the research. High fructose fruits place a unique burden on the liver. and the timing makes all the difference. Unlike glucose, which can be used by nearly every cell in your body for energy, fructose has a very limited destination. Almost all of it is processed in the liver. Muscles don't want it, the brain doesn't need it, so the liver takes the hit every single time. Now imagine this happening at night. At night, your metabolism is supposed to slow down. Your body shifts into repair mode. Insulin sensitivity naturally drops, meaning your body is less efficient at handling sugar. When a large fructose load arrives during this window, the liver doesn't say, let's burn this for energy. Instead, it says, let's convert this into fat. This process is called de novo lipogenesis, and it's one of the fastest ways to raise triglycerides in the blood. Triglycerides are not just a cholesterol issue. High triglycerides make your blood thicker and more sluggish. Thick blood doesn't flow smoothly through the tiny vessels of the brain. When blood flow slows, clotting risk increases. This is a direct pathway toward ischemic stroke. What makes fructose especially dangerous is how fast this happens. You can eat a sweet fruit or dried fruit at night, feel perfectly fine, go to sleep, and have no idea that your blood chemistry is shifting while you rest. Triglycerides rise, fatty acids increase, and the liver begins storing fat. None of this causes pain, but the consequences are serious. Over time, repeated nighttime fructose exposure leads to fatty liver. A fatty liver is not just a liver problem, it's a metabolic problem. Once the liver becomes fatty, it releases more inflammatory particles into the bloodstream. These particles damage blood vessels throughout the body, including those in the brain. Inflammation makes vessel walls rough instead of smooth, and rough vessel walls are prime locations for clots to form. This is where stroke risk quietly escalates. Another overlooked issue is how fructose affects blood viscosity. When triglycerides rise, blood becomes thicker. Think of the difference between water and syrup. Thicker blood moves more slowly and puts more strain on the heart. Slow-moving blood is more likely to clot, especially during sleep when circulation is already reduced. During deep sleep, your heart rate drops and blood pressure changes. If your blood is already thickened from a fructose-heavy evening snack, you've created the perfect ENV, environment for clot formation. This is one reason strokes often occur during the night or early morning. Now let's talk about insulin, because this is a critical piece. Fructose doesn't trigger insulin the same way glucose does, which makes people think it's harmless. But that's misleading. While insulin doesn't spike as sharply, fructose still contributes to insulin resistance over time. The liver becomes less responsive to insulin, and insulin resistance is a major driver of stroke risk. Insulin resistance leads to higher fasting blood sugar, higher triglycerides, and chronic inflammation. Each of these damages the lining of blood vessels. When the endothelial lining of a blood vessel is damaged, the body tries to repair it using clotting factors. This repair process can easily go too far and form a clot that blocks blood flow to the brain. And again, this process is accelerated at night. Your liver has a circadian rhythm. It's more efficient earlier in the day and less efficient at night. When you overwhelm it with fructose late in the evening, it simply can't process it cleanly. More fat is produced, more inflammation is generated, more metabolic stress occurs. Another layer to this problem is uric acid. Fructose uniquely raises uric acid levels. Elevated uric acid reduces nitric oxide, which is essential for healthy blood flow. Nitric oxide keeps blood vessels relaxed and flexible. Without enough of it, vessels become stiff and narrow. Stiff blood vessels combined with thick blood is a dangerous combination. When blood vessels lose flexibility, blood pressure rises. Even small nighttime increases in blood pressure significantly raise stroke risk. Many people have normal blood pressure during the day but experience hidden spikes at night. Fructose can trigger these spikes without you ever knowing it. And here's something most people never connect. As the liver converts fructose into fat, it uses up key nutrients, including magnesium. Magnesium is essential for preventing blood clotting, regulating blood pressure, and relaxing blood vessels. Low magnesium levels are consistently linked to higher stroke risk. So one high fructose evening habit is doing three things at once: thickening the blood, raising blood pressure, and lowering protective minerals. This isn't about one piece of fruit once in a while, it's about patterns. When someone eats sweet fruit, fruit juice, or dried fruit regularly in the evening, The liver never gets a break. Fat accumulates, triglycerides stay elevated, inflammation becomes chronic, blood vessels gradually lose their resilience. The brain is extremely sensitive to these changes. The brain depends on uninterrupted blood flow. It cannot tolerate even short disruptions. Thick blood and narrowed vessels reduce oxygen delivery even before a full stroke occurs. This contributes to subtle symptoms people often ignore, like brain fog, dizziness, or poor sleep. Over years, the risk compounds. People often say, but fruit is natural, so is alcohol, and we understand alcohol can damage the liver. Fructose, metabolically speaking, behaves much closer to alcohol than most people realize. Both are processed in the liver. Both increase fat production. Both raise triglycerides. Both promote inflammation when consumed in excess. The liver doesn't care if fructose came from soda or fruit. It processes it the same way. Now, here's the key takeaway. The danger is not fruit itself. The danger is concentrated fructose, eaten in large amounts at the wrong time without balance. When fructose hits the liver at night, the liver shifts from a fat-burning, repair-focused organ into a fat-producing factory. That shift changes your blood chemistry within hours. While you sleep, your blood becomes thicker. Your vessels become more rigid, and clot risk rises quietly. This is why Keynote 1 matters so much. Stroke is rarely sudden. It's the final event after years of silent metabolic damage. Nighttime fructose intake accelerates that damage in a way most people never suspect. If brain health matters to you, protecting your liver at night is non-negotiable. A healthy brain starts with clean blood, flexible vessels, and a liver that isn't overloaded when it should be resting. That's the real shock. When people think about stroke risk, they almost never think about what happens to blood sugar after dinner. Yet Keynote 2 may be one of the most important pieces of this entire conversation. Evening fruit sugar spikes don't just affect energy levels or sleep. They directly impact the blood vessels that feed your brain, and they do it at the exact time your brain is most vulnerable. Your brain relies on stable blood flow more than any other organ. It doesn't store oxygen. It doesn't store glucose. It needs a steady, calm supply every second. When blood sugar spikes sharply, especially in the evening, that stability is lost. Here's why the timing matters so much. Your body follows a circadian rhythm. During the day, insulin sensitivity is higher. Your muscles are active and can absorb glucose efficiently. At night, that changes. Insulin sensitivity naturally drops, muscles are less active, and your body prepares for rest and repair. When you introduce a large sugar load in the evening, your body simply can't handle it the same way. Blood sugar rises higher and stays elevated longer. That prolonged elevation is what damages blood vessels. High blood sugar irritates the inner lining of blood vessels, known as the endothelium. This lining is supposed to be smooth and flexible, allowing blood to flow effortlessly. When sugar levels spike, the lining becomes inflamed and sticky. This makes it easier for platelets to cling and form clots. Now apply this to the brain. The brain is filled with tiny, delicate blood vessels. These vessels are far more sensitive to damage than larger arteries. Repeated evening sugar spikes gradually weaken them. Over time, they lose elasticity and become prone to blockage or rupture. This damage doesn't happen overnight, but it happens faster than most people think. Another issue is oxidative stress. When blood sugar spikes, it increases the production of free radicals. These unstable molecules damage cells, including the cells that make up blood vessel walls. At night, your antioxidant defenses are lower and repair systems are slower. That means the damage from a sugar spike is more severe at night than during the day, and there's more. Evening sugar spikes interfere with nitric oxide production. Nitric oxide is what allows blood vessels to relax and widen. When sugar is high, nitric oxide availability drops. Blood vessels become tighter, narrower, and less responsive. Narrow vessels mean higher pressure. This is where nighttime blood pressure becomes critical. Many people assume their blood pressure is stable because it's normal at the doctor's office. But blood pressure follows a daily rhythm. It's supposed to dip at night. This nighttime dip gives your blood vessels a chance to rest. When evening sugar spikes occur, that dip may not happen. Instead, blood pressure stays elevated or even rises during sleep. This condition, often unnoticed, is strongly linked to stroke risk. Early morning strokes are particularly associated with this pattern. Blood pressure surges in the early morning hours, cortisol rises, and if blood vessels are already inflamed and stiff from nighttime sugar exposure, the risk of a clot or vessel rupture increases dramatically. Now let's talk about insulin itself. Why you spike blood sugar at night, insulin has to stay elevated longer to bring it down. Chronic evening insulin elevation leads to insulin resistance, especially in the brain. Yes, the brain can become insulin resistant too. Brain insulin resistance reduces blood flow regulation and impairs the brain's ability to protect itself from injury. It's also associated with cognitive decline and increased stroke vulnerability. And this creates a vicious cycle. Insulin resistance causes higher blood sugar. Higher blood sugar causes more vessel damage. More vessel damage increases stroke risk. Another overlooked factor is sleep disruption. Evening sugar spikes interfere with deep sleep. Blood sugar drops later in the night, triggering stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These hormones raise heart rate and blood pressure while you sleep. That sudden surge places stress on already damaged blood vessels. Many people wake up between 2 and 4 a.m. without knowing why. Blood sugar instability is often the reason. Repeated night after night, this pattern trains the body to maintain higher nighttime blood pressure. Over months and years, this significantly increases stroke risk. Let's not forget inflammation. High blood sugar activates inflammatory pathways. Inflammation thickens the blood and promotes clot formation. The brain's blood vessels are especially vulnerable to inflammation because they are protected by the blood-brain barrier. When inflammation damages this barrier, harmful substances can enter brain tissue, increasing the risk of both clotting and bleeding. What makes fruit-related sugar spikes tricky is perception. People don't see fruit as sugar, they see it as clean, safe, and healthy, so they don't limit portions, especially at night. A bowl of sweet fruit can easily deliver more sugar than a dessert, but without the awareness that comes with eating so. Mething labeled as a treat, and liquid fruit is even worse. Fruit juice causes rapid sugar absorption. There's no chewing, no fiber slowing things down. Blood sugar rises quickly and sharply. At night, that spike is like throwing fuel on a fire your body was trying to put out. Now consider someone who already has mild insulin resistance, prediabetes, or high blood pressure. In these individuals, evening sugar spikes are far more damaging. The blood vessels are already compromised. The margin for error is small. This is why Keynote 2 is so critical. Evening fruit sugar spikes don't just affect metabolism, they directly change nighttime blood pressure patterns, damage brain blood vessels, and increase the likelihood of a stroke occurring during sleep or shortly after waking. The brain needs calm, steady conditions at night, stable blood sugar, low inflammation, relaxed blood vessels. When sugar spikes disrupt that environment, the brain pays the price. This doesn't mean you should fear fruit. It means you should respect timing and quantity. Earlier in the day, your body can handle fruit far better. Muscles are active, insulin sensitivity is higher, blood sugar returns to baseline faster. The same fruit that causes harm at night may be relatively harmless in the morning. The problem isn't the fruit itself. It's the spike, the timing, and the repeated stress on the brain's delicate circulation. Stroke prevention isn't just about avoiding obvious dangers. It's about protecting your blood vessels during the quiet hours when damage happens silently. Evening sugar spikes quietly sabotage that protection, night after night, until one day the brain can no longer compensate. Keynote 3 may be the most underestimated part of this entire discussion because it doesn't sound dramatic at first. Minerals, nitric oxide, vessel flexibility. These don't grab attention whey sugar or fat do. But from a brain doctor's perspective, this is where things quietly turn dangerous. Excess fructose lowers magnesium and nitric oxide, and that combination makes brain arteries stiff, inflamed, and far more vulnerable to stroke. Let's start with magnesium, because this mineral is absolutely critical for brain circulation. Magnesium helps blood vessels relax. It prevents excessive clotting. It stabilizes heart rhythm. It controls calcium movement inside cells. In the brain, magnesium acts like a natural calming agent for blood vessels, keeping them flexible and responsive instead of tight and reactive. When magnesium levels drop, blood vessels constrict more easily. platelets become stickier, blood pressure rises more easily under stress. All of these changes increase stroke risk. Now, here's what most people don't realize. Fructose actively depletes magnesium. When the liver processes fructose, it uses magnesium-dependent enzymes. The more fructose you consume, the more magnesium is pulled into this metabolic process. Over time, especially with frequent intake, magnesium stores drop. This doesn't always show up on routine blood tests because most magnesium is inside cells, not floating in the bloodstream. So someone can appear normal on paper while their tissues are actually deficient, and magnesium deficiency doesn't usually announce itself loudly. It shows up quietly as muscle tightness, poor sleep, higher stress response, irregular heart rhythm, or creeping blood pressure. In the brain, it shows up as reduced vascular protection. Now add nitric oxide to the picture. Nitric oxide is a signaling molecule that tells blood vessels to relax and widen. It allows blood to flow smoothly and evenly, especially through small vessels. The brain relies heavily on nitric oxide to regulate its blood supply moment by moment. Without enough nitric oxide, blood vessels become stiff. They lose their ability to adjust to changes in demand. Pressure builds unevenly, and fragile vessels are placed under strain. Fructose interferes with nitric oxide in several ways. First, it raises uric acid. Elevated uric acid directly blocks nitric oxide production. Less nitric oxide means tighter blood vessels. Second, fructose increases oxidative stress. Oxidative stress destroys nitric oxide before it can do its job. So even if your body makes it, it doesn't last long enough to protect your vessels. Third, insulin resistance, which fructose promotes, also reduces nitric oxide signaling. Insulin normally helps stimulate nitric oxide release in blood vessels. When cells become insulin resistant, that signal weakens. The result is a perfect storm. Lower magnesium removes the calming effect on blood vessels. Lower nitric oxide removes the relaxation signal. What you're left with are vessels that are tense, narrow, and reactive. In the brain, this is especially dangerous. Brain arteries are not designed to handle stiffness well. They need to be elastic to accommodate changes in blood flow, especially during sleep and waking transitions. When they become stiff, pressure is transferred directly to vessel walls instead of being absorbed smoothly. This increases the risk of both blockages and bleeding, and timing once again matters. At night, your nervous system shifts. Blood pressure should dip, vessels should relax, repair should occur, but when magnesium is low and nitric oxide is suppressed, that nighttime relaxation doesn't fully happen. Instead of resting, vessels remain partially constricted. This raises nighttime blood pressure, even if daytime readings look normal. Hidden nighttime hypertension is one of the strongest predictors of stroke, especially in older adults. Now consider the role of inflammation. Low magnesium increases inflammatory signaling. Inflammation makes blood vessels more fragile and more prone to clot formation. It also damages the blood-brain barrier, which is supposed to protect brain tissue from harmful substances in the blood. When the blood-brain barrier is weakened, inflammatory particles can enter the brain more easily. This creates a local inflammatory environment that further increases stroke vulnerability. Nitric oxide normally helps protect this barrier. When nitric oxide is low, that protection weakens. So once again, fructose is working on multiple levels at the same time. It's not just about sugar, it's about mineral depletion, signaling disruption, inflammation, and vessel mechanics. Another overlooked consequence of low magnesium is increased calcium buildup in blood vessels. Magnesium acts as a natural calcium regulator. When magnesium is low, calcium is more likely to accumulate where it doesn't belong, including in artery walls. This contributes to vascular stiffness and calcification. Calcified vessels are less flexible and more likely to crack or block under pressure. In the brain, this loss of flexibility is particularly risky during blood pressure fluctuations, such as early morning surges. This explains something clinical. ENs often see people with no obvious warning signs, no severe symptoms, and acceptable lab numbers still experience strokes. When you look deeper, many of them have long-standing magnesium depletion, impaired nitric oxide signaling, and subtle vascular stiffness that went undetected. Fructose accelerates this process quietly, and again, fruit perception plays a role. People don't think they need to balance or limit fruit intake. They don't consider mineral depletion. They don't think about nitric oxide, so the habit continues unchecked. Over time, the brain's protective margin shrinks. The vessels lose resilience. The blood becomes more reactive. Pressure changes become more dangerous. This doesn't mean fructose is evil. It means excess fructose without mineral balance, without timing awareness, and without metabolic flexibility creates vulnerability, especially in people who already have stress, poor sleep, high blood pressure, or insulin resistance. Here's the hopeful part. Magnesium levels can recover. Nitric oxide signaling can improve. Blood vessels can regain flexibility if the stress is removed early enough. Reducing excessive fructose intake, especially at night, gives the body a chance to rebuild mineral stores. Choosing whole foods with natural magnesium support helps restore balance. Supporting healthy sleep patterns allows nitric oxide to function as it should. The brain wants stability. It wants relaxed vessels, clean signaling, and steady flow. When magnesium and nitric oxide are protected, the brain circulation becomes far more resilient. Stroke risk drops not because of one dramatic change, but because the underlying vulnerability is removed. That's why Keynote 3 is so important. Stroke is not just about clots or pressure. It's about whether your blood vessels are calm or tense, flexible or rigid, protected or inflamed. Excess fructose quietly pushes them toward tension and rigidity by draining magnesium and suppressing nitric oxide. Once you see this connection, you realize why something that looks so harmless on the surface can have such serious consequences over time. That's the real lesson.